This is Tucker Carlson, as many people know. He's decided to interview Vladimir Putin in Russia, and there seems to be like a lot of outrage over this. I think Tucker is very obviously a Russian spy or a plant or stooge or whatever. Not even useful idiot. In my opinion, he knows what he's doing. But just listen to what he says here. This is him announcing his interview with Vladimir Putin.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we thought about it carefully over many months.
Okay, so just saying there are risks, obviously, well, that's true. There are risks, absolutely. But the implication seems to be the U.S. government is going to come after him to kill him or some other nonsense.
Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no...
Is that so? Not informed, you say? Okay.
They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive.
Okay, I've said this before, but let me just put this on the record. This is the best money the United States has ever spent. It's money intended to and accomplishing the task of embarrassing a historical adversary, somebody who views themselves as an adversary. And really, half the money, at least 50% of what we're sending isn't even cash. We're sending old supplies that need to be recycled anyway. Every 5 years, we have to get new MREs, new helmets, new weapons, new blankets, new tents, new everythings. That's just like part of having a military. That's part of the cost. Instead of throwing these in the trash, we are equipping our own army with the most advanced technology known to man, effectively, and giving our previous stuff that we were going to throw in the trash to Ukrainians. It's a perfect trade-off. The other half is in money. It's showing that they're not as strong as they want everybody to believe them to be, which is valuable because people are afraid of them right now, or they were before the Ukraine war. Now no one is really afraid of them.
The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians.
And whose fault is that?
And it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well.
Sure, yes.
And in total, they have upended the world economy.
No, they've upended Russia's economy. Russia is not the world. Very different. And Russia deserved those sanctions. Russia did this. This is their fault. I don't want to hear it. Look, they lined like 100,000 troops up along the border in Ukraine, and they marched in. I don't want to hear any of this nonsense. It's everyone else's fault. It's the U.S.'s fault for putting sanctions on them and all this. No, this is Russia's fault. The fact that he's wording it this way should be all you need to hear to realize that he's a Russian stooge, not even a useful idiot, seemingly a willing participant in harming Russia's enemies, effectively.
The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast.
Not really. That's just Russian propaganda.
The system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the U.S. dollar.
Not really. It's still the it's still the world reserve currency.
These are not small changes. They are...
I mean, this is all just Russian propaganda. Why is he repeating this?
History-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like.
Oh, you mean Russia's historical allies? I mean, what if we ask people in places that are not historical allies with Russia? Would they say the same? I doubt it. Quick interjection, this won't take long. If you like what I do, I'd appreciate it if you watch the video to the end. YouTube bases video reach off of watch time, so watching even an extra minute makes the video go further. Liking and subscribing goes a long way too. Finally, it would be awesome if you guys checked out my Patreon. All links are in the description, of course. Okay, back to the video. This is just pure, unadulterated propaganda, and what's worse, you know, I get you've got your little pet issues in the United States that you want to spread propaganda about. That's bad. But what is even worse about this is that this is benefiting an adversarial nation to the U.S. He is setting out to help people or help dictators overthrow the U.S. by putting stuff like this out. This is shameless garbage.
And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And
look, I don't even know what he's doing. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that's changed. What do you mean nothing has changed?
they think that because no one has told them the truth. Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers.
Right, okay.
And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began.
You mean since the day that Putin marched his troops over the border in Ukraine and sent paratroopers into Kyiv to take it? I just want to make sure we're talking about the same event. That's the thing you're talking about, right?
For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe.
Okay, that's just complete nonsense. I don't know if Zelensky's going to take an interview with Tucker. I doubt it. I would say no because he knows that he is a Russian propagandist at this point. If he sat down in a room with Tucker Carlson, I would worry that Zelensky wouldn't walk out of that room alive anymore. This guy is a Russian puppet now, right? Person in Asia here can't really see much change, right? You telling me that Tucker is lying about the United States being diminished by the fact that Russia started a war in Ukraine? This is such a joke. You know, the thing is, here's how I know how the world feels about it. Okay, let me just read this article to you about the United Nations. It's called the United Nations General Assembly Resolution ES11/1. It was a resolution of the 11th Emergency Special Session of the UN General Assembly, adopted March 2nd, 2022. That's about a week or two after Russia lined troops up along the Ukrainian border and marched them in. I think he marched the troops in February. He had spent the previous few months lining them up along the border. March 2nd, like 2 weeks after this happened, 141 countries voted for Russia to exit Ukraine. 5 voted for Russia to stay. It deplored Russia's invasion of Ukraine and demanded a full withdrawal of Russian forces and a reversal of its decision to recognize the self-declared People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. That was Putin's attempt to break eastern Ukraine off of Ukraine as a whole, which, by the way, was predicted by John McCain in 2014. Really.
What is going to happen? I predict to you that it will be another step in Vladimir Putin's strategy to separate eastern Ukraine from Ukraine. And
this is 2014. Putin invaded Crimea. McCain spoke to a reporter about what he knew Putin was going to do. This was the plan all along.
We have to understand that Vladimir Putin's ambitions are the restoration of the old Russian Empire.
But he has never said, has he, that he wants eastern Ukraine to be incorporated into Russian territory?
What he has said is, well, just a few days ago, he said, I could take Kiev in 2 weeks.
And he tried. When this whole war started, he tried.
What he has said is that he wants Nova Russia, which is an old czarist phrase, which means he wants eastern Ukraine. He wants to make sure he keeps Crimea. And he would like to see, if he can get away with it, Moldova and the Baltics.
That's interesting, isn't it? Baltics being like Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, I think. They're south of Finland and north of Ukraine, I believe. It's been a while since I've looked at a map. But the point is that McCain predicted everything that's happening right now in 2014. Here we sit listening to Tucker Carlson lie about it. Now, how does the world feel? United Nations General Assembly Resolution ES-11/1. March 2nd, like 2 weeks after this happened, 141 countries voted for Russia to exit Ukraine. 5 voted for Russia to stay, and 35 didn't say a word. They just stood there. They said, we'll see how this plays out. We're going to stand on the sidelines. Tell me again, the world sees it, you say? 141 countries voted against Russia doing this. The world sees it? This guy's a propagandist, and it's the worst kind of propaganda. Why is he doing this? What is his goal here?
Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it.
Just nonsensical garbage.
That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict.
I think people have tried, but Russia is the aggressor here. Russia is breaking international law. Russia started a war with a neighboring country. Russia is putting world stability at risk. Russia was denounced by 141 countries, only supported by 5, and 35 others abstained from the vote. For the record, 12 more were absent. I'm assuming they were underdeveloped countries, maybe Somaliland, and so I have no idea. But the point is that nobody in the world wanted this or liked this. Everybody recognized this as the war crime that it was, or that it currently continues to be. And here we sit listening to Tucker Carlson defend it, claim that Putin is innocent in this whole thing and no one has heard his part. People just need to listen to the guy that sent, 100,000 troops over a border to murder people for no reason.
Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong.
Whether people have interviewed Putin is completely immaterial to the fact that Tucker is a propagandist right now and is not acting in the role of journalist. If you go into an interview puffing up your interview partner, your interviewee or whatever, to this degree, this is not journalism. This is commentary, political commentary at best. He's supporting Putin with this, and he claims to be a journalist. Really?
Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too.
Who wrote the script? Do you think Tucker did? Do you think Tucker's script writers wrote the script, or do you think Putin's script writers wrote the script? It sounds like something right out of Putin's mouth, right? Americans are implicated in this, and we have the right to tell them that because we're Americans too. Okay, you could tell us that whether you're American or not. It's kind of weird that you mentioned being American.
That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too.
I don't even know why he said that. That's just weird.
Freedom of speech is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe.
Sure, yeah. Nobody said you weren't.
That right cannot be taken away no matter who is in the White House.
Yes, correct. And go on? What's the point here?
But they're trying anyway.
Who's trying? Who is trying to take your right to speak away? What are you even talking about? I mean, he's acting as a propagandist for Russia. Russia's not technically an enemy because we're not in a direct hot war with them. In fact, war hasn't even been declared between us and them.
Almost 3 years ago, the Biden administration illegally spied on our text messages. And
that is not what happened. God, it's fascinating that this is the defense he's going with on this one. There's a lawsuit against Fox News by Dominion. It's a voting system company. And Dominion subpoenaed Fox and other people and other phones and all that stuff for text message records to prove that they knew exactly what they were doing. Now, whose texts did they receive? They got Tucker Carlson's, and they proved that Tucker knew what he was doing. Oh, and they proved he hated Donald Trump, too. That wasn't Biden stealing his text messages? Like, what does that even mean? That was you sticking your foot in your mouth and getting in all kinds of hot water for it.
Not be taken away no matter who is in the White House. But they're trying anyway. Almost 3 years ago, the Biden administration illegally spied on our text messages and then
did not happen.
Leaked the contents to their servants in the news media.
Again, did not happen.
They did this in order to stop a Putin interview that we were planning.
No, I do remember him talking about a Putin interview all the way back then. No, that would have been fine. I don't have a problem with anybody interviewing Putin. In fact, they should. Quick note before we continue, I want to let you know I just wrote a book. If you want to check it out, owenmorgan.com/book. It's a book about my experiences within Jehovah's Witnesses. It's completely understandable if you know nothing about Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you're a Christian, it's a good reference to use for why Jehovah's Witnesses are wrong about their interpretation of the Bible. The last chapter of the book is 100 questions that I have for the governing body. I'm selling the last chapter separately as its own separate guide if you guys want to get that too. So check it out, owenmorgan.com/book. I'd appreciate that. I would like to see people interview Putin. Absolutely. That'd be fascinating. I mean, it would be pure unadulterated propaganda coming from Vladimir Putin, but I would love to hear an interview that included at least a little pushback from the interviewer. Tucker Carlson's going to offer no pushback. It is only going to be positive, putting a puff in his petticoat, basically, the entire time. The interview actually happened already. It happened a lot sooner than I expected it to. I gave it a listen, and of course, he is only putting a puff in Putin's petticoat. Excuse the alliteration. Actually, he didn't really say anything to Putin. He just kept asking him question after question to draw out more information, and Putin just propagandized the entire time. The entire interview could be summed up like this. Putin told the history of Russia from the year 800-something and used that history as the premise to claim ownership over Ukraine. He says Ukraine was historically part of Russia, and so were the Baltics, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, I think. And that justifies Putin going into Latvia and Moldova and Ukraine and just taking them because he owns them ultimately. That's the way he views it. It was insane. And of course, Putin insulted Tucker, pointed out that the CIA wouldn't even hire him, pointed out that he's just a talk show host. He's not a serious journalist. It was actually kind of entertaining. If you want to see more of the Tucker interview with Putin, I might actually watch it on my Unfiltered channel, Owen Unfiltered. In fact, you can go over there now and check. Maybe it's already uploaded, my breakdown of the interview. But anyway, that's how it went. It was ridiculous.
Last month, we're pretty certain they did exactly the same thing once again.
We are pretty certain that the Biden administration hacked our phones and took our text messages. Come on.
Again, but this time we came to Moscow anyway. We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States.
No.
We want it to remain prosperous and free.
Absolutely not. No.
We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we.
Okay. I mean, you're filthy rich. Did you even need to? I don't understand what the point was.
We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing.
I mean, he's saying things that are just normal. Like, all of this stuff is true about me, too. You can watch my videos for free. Nothing's behind a paywall. I literally have nothing behind a paywall. Every video I ever release is public. So, yeah, okay, great. Congratulations, Tucker.
Shot live to tape and unedited on our website, tuckercarlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X.
Why am I not surprised by that?
And we're grateful for that. Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this video on other less principled platforms.
No, they're not less principled. I don't even know who he's talking about or what platforms he's talking about, but there's totally a justification for taking away the reach of this interview. He wants to put it on his website. Go nuts. You can do whatever you want. But social media companies should not give this viral reach, in my opinion.
That's what they do. They are afraid of information they can't control. But you have no reason to be afraid of it. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview.
Yeah, he's just going to put a puff in his petticoat for 20 straight minutes, I bet, right? Or however long the interview, maybe 3 hours. It's a long time to puff someone's petticoat. You ever tried to puff a petticoat?
We are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself. Thanks.
Pure, unadulterated propaganda. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And what's even worse is that people are defending this. He's obviously not doing journalism here, right? He has a Russian bend. Could it be any clearer? That's not journalism, that's propaganda. And we have Megyn Kelly, ex-Fox host. She's on Sky News now, apparently. I'm not even sure where she is. She had something to say about it. Listen to this.
Let's also talk here about, I noticed that, other people in the media are going nuts because Tucker Carlson is interviewing
a Russian propagandist? Yeah.
Putin. And I was thinking, who's somebody else who's interviewed Putin? Oh, that's right, my mate Megyn. But what I also find quite bizarre here is that I'm a little bit of like the old school rules about, remember the Time Person of the Year? It wasn't about whether they were a good guy or a bad guy. It was whether they were, impactful, right? So
sure, yeah.
Therefore, whether they're good guys or bad guys, you still want to sit down and talk to them.
Absolutely, yes.
What happens in the interview, okay, we'll all wait and watch and make our own decision. But the freak out at somebody even going to Moscow to interview him...
That's not what I'm freaking out about. I think it would be good for somebody to go in there and interview Putin. Absolutely. I want to see that interview. But not from a Russian propagandist.
I find quite odd, Megyn.
So sick of this nonsense. I mean, back in my day, we were allowed to interview the bad guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I have talked about interviews. Oh my God, dude. I've talked about this, a couple of clips, like 1,000 times. I talked about this November 4th, 1982 interview with the KKK Grand Wizard. I mean, I went through the whole thing. That's me platforming a KKK Grand Wizard. There's nothing wrong with interviewing bad people. It's good. It shows people what they have to say, what they're all about and everything. I have no problem with that. Yes, interview bad people, absolutely. That's not the problem. It's that Tucker Carlson is a propagandist.
Back in my day, we were allowed to interview the bad guys. It was
back in her day.
Isn't a shock to see a journalist across from a bad guy. I watched Mike Wallace in what was called Murderer's Row on 60 Minutes because they were all so tough. Interviewed the Ayatollah of Iran.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. I would love to see those interviews for sure. Nothing wrong with that. Like I said,
I watched him interview the head of the KKK wearing a white hood.
Yes. Love it. I want to hear more of that. I want to see more crazy interviews like this.
The guy was in the hood in the interview. Diane Sawyer, another person I greatly admire, interviewed Jeffrey Dahmer, who murdered people and then ate them. That was not a bridge too far for Americans to see as an interview. Charles Manson, one of the most notorious murderers in American history. She sat down across from him.
Yeah, but you know the difference between this and all of the examples that were cited? Those people went into those interviews understanding that this person is unglued from reality. Dude has a swastika carved into his forehead and is like acting all crazy, gigantic eyes and running around, and you don't know if he's going to if he brought like a shiv with him that he's going to stab you in the interview.
They still have no idea what you're about. Tell me in a sentence who you are. Nobody. I'm nobody. I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine. And a straight razor if you get too close to me.
The interview is not framed as this person isn't so bad or let's hear their side of the story. It's framed as this is what the person did. Now let's sit here and listen. And they push back sometimes. Really, the reporter's goal in interviewing the KKK leader was to get his ideas out and understand them and dissect them. Now, the KKK interview that I talked about a minute ago, this one, John Brennan or something, I don't remember who the interviewer was. He was biased against the KKK leader. If you're interviewing somebody that's absolutely terrible, push back against their insane claims. Make sure that it's on record. Everybody understands what they're saying is a lie. But listen, let them get it out. You want them to get out what they have to say. That's interesting, And what's Tucker going to do in this interview with Putin? He's going to talk about how great he is nonstop.
I don't know when the new rule got handed down that we only get to interview the good guys.
There is no such rule.
It's very wacky.
It would be if it was real. This is another case of cancel culture strikes again, except there is no cancel culture. It's in her head. Cancel culture is in her head.
Only get to interview the good guys. It's very wacky. I went through this myself when I interviewed Alex Jones. Yes, now Tucker's going to go through it with Putin. Look, I haven't seen the interview. I support his right and duty as a journalist to do it. If he's not tough, if he doesn't ask him tough questions, he'll be excoriated, rightfully so.
He's not going to ask him tough questions, and he's not going to be excoriated either. Rightfully so, she says. Oh, you're going to excoriate Tucker then when he all but gets on his knees for Vladimir Putin to praise him doing this? I love you, Putin. You're the best. Hands clasped like so, praying to him practically. This is what Tucker's going to be doing in his interview with Vladimir Putin.
That's a duty he has. He shouldn't drop that ball. But let's just wait to see what the interview looks and sounds like before we dismiss it as
if Tucker didn't make it clear what the interview is going to look like in his announcement.
Partisan hackery or some sort of ethical breach or some betrayal of the country.
Oh, he betrayed the country.
But also, and look, the actions of the government is always different than the actions of the people. But the idea that even going there is some sort of, act of...
No, I have no problem with Tucker going there. That's fine. I think it's kind of interesting that Russia is arresting high-profile people and holding them hostage to trade for this or that or whatever thing to get something back from the U.S. Like Brittany Griner. Remember Brittany Griner? Putin had Brittany Griner arrested, sent her to a work camp for 10 years until they finally managed to make a trade for hostages. I think it's a bad idea to go to Russia right now for that reason, if no other. And if somebody as high profile as Tucker goes to Russia and doesn't get arrested and, a hostage trade is not attempted, that should be a sign, right? Shouldn't that be a sign to everybody else?
Helping the enemy. I spent some time in a YouTube deep dive the other day where I was...
Oh, that phrase never ends well.
Helping the enemy. I spent some time in a YouTube deep dive the other day where I was having a look at some old Billy Joel stuff. And remember when the culture sort of in the late 80s, early 90s was, American invited to Moscow and shaking the hands of normal people and they're just...
Yeah, it was a big deal back then because of the Cold War. There was an iron curtain. We didn't have any communication out of that area. We didn't know what it was like. Some people escaped. I mean, they didn't know what it was like over here either, really. So there was this huge separation. It was a big deal for us to finally join together and be able to shake hands and talk to each other. By the way, look at the chyron here. Left go nuts over Carlson's Putin interview. He's free to interview whoever he wants, and I really want a Putin interview on record. I just don't want him to get on his knees and praise him nonstop. That's all.
It's like us. That seemed to be where we were. Instead, now it's, the entire country and its citizenry are all kooky and crazy and...
No, I don't have a problem with Russians.
Evil and weird. And again, I'm not letting the bloke off the hook. You went tough on him, and obviously he is the aggressor when it comes to Ukraine. No question.
Yeah, oh my God, really? You're apparently they acknowledge that. Well, that's something that Tucker does not acknowledge. He says he was the aggressor when it comes to Ukraine. Somebody tell Tucker that. What is going on? Watch her face when he says that. Just see if she reacts at all. She's an interviewer. She's not a reporter. She's a political commentator. But she has been a reporter in the past. And apparently now she's choosing to wear shirts that just show her cleavage. Like, literally, turtlenecks that have a cutout for her boobs. Why would somebody wear that? I don't know. What a bizarre shirt to wear if you want to be taken seriously. I don't take her seriously for other reasons, but it's just an odd choice is all I'm saying. All right, now watch her reaction here when he says this.
He is the aggressor when it comes to Ukraine, no question. But this sort of total othering.
Okay, she kind of nodded her head a little bit, yes. So she seems to recognize that Putin is to blame here, right? I wonder how she's going to react when Tucker gets on his knees to praise Putin, as he inevitably absolutely will. Is she going to side with Putin, or is she going to side with, or is she going to side with America?
But this sort of total othering of everyone in the joint.
I have no problem with Russians. They're A-okay with me.
Seems very, yes, it's very weird, but surprise, surprise, sort of, you know, the media.
Look, call me the left, okay? Label me the left. I am the left. Left go nuts over Carlson's Putin interview. No, I think he's a scumbag and he's betraying the United States. That's my problem. If, I don't know, if an AP reporter went over and interviewed Putin, would I have a problem with it? Absolutely not. I would love to see that. I would watch it. I'd watch the whole thing. If we had, what's his name? If we had this guy, John Brennan, maybe Brennan is his name. If we had this guy over there interviewing Putin, all for it. Love it. If we got this Inside Edition woman over there who interviewed Kenneth Copeland about the verse in the Bible about the eye of the needle, I'd be all for it if she went and interviewed Putin.
To those critics that say that a preacher should not be living a life of luxury, what is your response to that?
They're wrong.
Like 15 uninterrupted seconds of dead silence and a creepy smile.
That's it?
That it's a misunderstanding of the Bible.
No, it's not. You misunderstood what Jesus said or intentionally misinterpreted. Anyway, the point is, I'd love to see this woman over there interviewing Putin. Let's get her over there. She didn't inject bias in. She asked plain questions. She wanted the answers to a certain number of things. The Bible says being wealthy is wrong. How do you justify that? Or she does follow-ups and stuff, right? This is hard-hitting journalism right here. I love it. Only problem is, I think if she went and did that interview for Putin, I think this woman would not walk out of that room alive.
You said that you don't like to fly commercial because you don't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did.
Okay. God, dude. What happened to all those verses about wrath, being slow to anger and all that junk? Anyway. Point is, I'd love to see some real journalists interview Putin. I want to see that. I want that. Yes. That is not what is happening with Tucker Carlson. Like, not even a little bit.
So, and I was going to say, America's sweetheart, Goldie Hawn, she went over there with Kurt Russell and had an audience at the Kremlin. I mean,
yeah, that's fine. I have no problem with that.
It used to be just as you say. And by the way, now having been to Moscow and to St. Petersburg and to Kaliningrad, personally, I can tell you the Russian people are absolutely lovely, and they love.
Yeah. For sure. Tons of lovely Russian people. Absolutely. Call me the left. I agree. Who are you arguing with? She seems to be like in this state of mind where she's trying to defend the good nature of the Russian people. Fine. Yes, Russians are cool people. Absolutely. I don't understand what you're trying to prove here. Quick note before we continue, I'm writing a book about my experiences inside the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. I cover the culture and doctrine. It's understandable even if you know literally nothing about the religion, so I'd appreciate it if you gave it a read. To find out more, go to owenmorgan.com/book. All links are in the description, of course. Okay, back to the video.
They love Americans. They would love to come over here and visit. They love when we go over there. They love to show off their cities. They're so grateful when we show any interest in them.
She's talking about him as a monolith, and nobody's really a monolith. But okay, Russian people are just like everybody else on the planet. They're cool.
These are not some rabid America haters. It's not.
Did anybody say that?
North Korea. You know, it's Russia actually feels very European in places like St. Petersburg.
This is so stupid.
Which is really like. It looks like Venice. If you've never been, it's like Venice. It's got a bunch of canals. It's got beautiful waters. It's just absolutely lovely. St. Petersburg.
Okay, look, we're not talking about the landscape. We're talking about the fact that it's run by a dictator. And Tucker Carlson, her buddy or her co-worker, I guess. They both worked at Fox for a while. He's going over there to propagandize against America for the dictator in Russia. That's my problem.
So my point is, you can hate the government, not hate the people. And that's the...
Sure. fine.
way through this, because our kids are going to have to live with Russia in this world. And there's no point in starting and continuing another Cold War.
Well, the Cold War was not between the American people and the Russian people. It was between the governments. And that extended out. You know, the government got people whipped into a blood frenzy against the other side, of course. But I don't hate Russian people, and Russian people don't hate me, I assume. That's not what this is about. We're talking about the dictator.
It's not to say that they shouldn't be held to account, the government, for what they've done. And yes, they support Vladimir Putin. They love a strong man. That's how Russians are. And Mother Russia's really been, she's taken it on the chin these past several decades.
I'm not sure that everybody supports Putin. I think he's more like a Trump figure. Some like him, some don't. But people are afraid to vote against him. And like Lukashenko in Belarus, he, interestingly enough, gets between 69 and 71% of the vote every single time. Bizarre, right? Is it weird that everybody always gets exactly in that number range? Is it weird to anybody else that, like, slowly but surely every single member of parliament or whatever has slowly been replaced with members of Putin's party, people who are loyal to Putin? Anyone think that's odd? Yeah, Putin is popular in Russia. That's true. He is. Very popular. Like a cult-like figure. But he is absolutely rigging the elections, no doubt.
And Mother Russia's really been, she's taken it on the chin these past several decades. And they see a man who's standing up for Russia, and it's not uniform, but as a whole, they like him. Now, on the Tucker front, part of the reason they're skeptical of Tucker is he has not been hard on Russia in his coverage of this.
No, that's not the problem. It's not that he hasn't been hard on Russia. He is putting a puff in Putin's petticoat. I don't know how else to say it without using swears. He's doing everything he can to show his love for Vladimir Putin. And it's absurd. Megyn Kelly sees that, right? She must see that. Is she lying here or what? I don't know.
He's been, if anything, defensive of them. And so I think people are expecting him to do a very flattering softball interview.
Well, of course, he made that clear in his announcement.
That will further the narrative that people feel they've heard from Tucker, which is very defensive of Russia and very hard on Ukraine. And so
he's very defensive of Vladimir Putin and very critical. I guess he thinks like Ukraine should just give up and let Russia take over. That seems to be that's what I'm interpreting here.
Tucker, which is very defensive of Russia and very hard on Ukraine. And so they're anticipating hating it. Now, okay, that may be a problem with the interview. It may not be.
No, it's going to be. Tucker said so in his announcement.
Let's wait to see. Crazy thought. Let's wait to see how he does. And maybe if he asks him some tough questions, it'll be a real opportunity for us to learn something about, I'm going to be honest, the whole thing will be propaganda on Putin's part.
Oh, absolutely. But that's valuable. That's why I play propaganda. It's valuable. It's useful to listen to the things that the other side talks about so that we can learn what they are afraid of. That's why I watch Flashpoint all the time and stuff like that on Owen Unfiltered YouTube channel. I watch that stuff because if they stop talking about abortion completely, they just cut it entirely out of their program, I know that they're afraid of what it's going to do to the party if they bring it up. If they zero in on immigration issues, I know they're doing that because they have millions or even billions of dollars invested in market research to see what people think and what they're concerned about and all that. And they believe, based on their market research, that immigration is the key issue that's going to determine the race. Yes, listening to propaganda is valuable. I agree.
I'm going to be honest, the whole thing will be propaganda on Putin's part. But so I'm not going to say what he's actually thinking, but what he wants us to think, which is also interesting.
Tucker Carlson is I don't know, what would you even call him? He's just like a lapdog for Putin. He's doing whatever Putin wants him to do. The fact that he went to Russia after Brittany Griner was arrested and imprisoned for 10 years and then traded for, one of the prisoners we have here. The fact that Tucker went there after that event and did not himself get arrested should be all you need to know. His only goal is to improve Putin's reputation and image among Americans. And you know why that's disturbing to me more than anything? It's kind of grainy, but this picture says, "I'd rather be a Russian than a Democrat." Two guys wearing these shirts at a Trump rally in 2018. It was a midterm year. I guess he was probably promoting midterm, candidates and stuff. "I'd rather be Russian than Democrat." That is about as bizarre and disturbing as it gets. Tell me what you think about this in the comments. I'm disgusted by Tucker. I think he's proven to be a Russian spy at this point, and people should be monitoring his phone calls. No joke.